Hey, what's up, Fantasy Heads? This is Mitchell with FF Real Talk, and we're going to get right into Week 12's waiver additions. If you saw Week 11, you saw one of the more crazy helter-skelter weeks. It reminded me of, what was it, Week 2, where all the injuries were compiling, everything was going nuts. It was a different people wasn't performing, upsets was happening, and players that wasn't expected to perform were performing. It was a lot like that this week. It didn't really affect my fantasy teams too much. They performed pretty well, unlike that earlier week in the season, but this week was crazy nonetheless. But in terms of the additions this week, we're not going to talk about percentages. I'm not even going to go into that, and I'm not going to be getting informative about what they did in the last week in terms of their points or their statistics or whatever. This is going to be the whys, if you will, in terms of why you should pick them up. We're going to go right into number one, and I'm sure y'all know who number one is without any shadow of a doubt. It's not Jonas Gray. No, it's Isaiah Crowell. Last week, he was named a starter. Today, it was announced that Ben Tate got cut from the team. All you need to know is that he was named a starter last week, clear-cut role. He's definitely going to be the starter this week, clear-cut role. And right now, all West owners should hold on to him as well. What it does is it basically reverts back to the beginning of the season when Tate went out, but with more clarity in who they want to be the guy. When Tate went out the first time, it was West who was going to be the guy, Crowell who was looking better. Now they've decided on Crowell and Tate's out of the picture. This should bode very well for Crowell, in my opinion. So if you luckily added him last year because he was last week because he was named the starter, you're in good shape. If not, and he's out there, because he's out there in a lot of leagues, go get him. That's the first person you want to add who has a clear path to usage right now. Number two, Jonas Gray. And I say that number two with a little bit of hesitancy. We'll first get into the good news. You saw something this past weekend that you may very well never see again in your life. Nearly 200 yards, 199 with 4 touchdowns. I mean, that's just unheard of, and especially from a nobody player that no one even knew, that they knew he was a part of the roster and the rotation, but it wasn't expected to be him. But the thing is, the bad news about this is he's not going to do this coming week. They're playing the Lions, and there's no way the Lions are going to let him run on them. And even more so, to illustrate that point, Belichick has basically a 31-team package. Every team he has a different game plan for. That's why you can never guess fantasy production with the Patriots, with the exception of Brady and Gronk usually, because they are going to do something different every week with every team. I don't expect the run game to really get going this week. If not, matter of fact, I expect Vereen to do much more than Gray because he's a back that catches, unlike Gray. So temper your expectations with this. He did an excellent performance this past weekend, and he will probably have some more meaningful performances going forward. But this week is a bad matchup, and the Patriots' schedule in terms of skilled players, they're facing some tough Ds. He's going to be facing some tough defenses week 14 to 17, which is pretty much what I care about. 3 of the 4 are going to be tough defenses for him. So just temper your expectations. Pick him up. I'm not saying don't get him, but if Isaiah Crowell's out there, I'm definitely getting him first. But temper your expectations. Don't expect to see anything close to that going forward this season, but definitely pick him up. Number 3, Jordan Matthews. I spoke on him last week. I'm insisting on him this week. Even with the Sanchez game where Sanchez is Sanchez, Matthews still managed to get a touchdown, and that's now 4 in the last 3 weeks. And with the yardage he's getting recently, he's becoming a poor man's Jeremy Maclin. I mean, you need to get him now. Sanchez is going to bounce back more than likely from this bad outing, and a lot of this stuff was junk time, I know, but it looks like the rapport is clear between the two, and he's going to be used. So that's definitely someone who shouldn't be out on the waiver wires any further. Number 4, Coby Fleener. This week, we lost one of this year's best tight ends with an ankle sprain, and we don't know how long that's going to be. But what that did open up was a tight end who had flashes of goodness last year, and he was starting to come on some few shining moments this year. A week ago, he went for 77 yards and a touchdown. This week, he nearly doubled the average yards with 144. As I said before, when I was touting Allen, luck depends heavily on his tight ends, and he now has Fleener, who he knows, and Fleener's learned the offense a year more than he did when he was showing up some last year, and he's going to be the prime beneficiary for however long Allen's out. So if you got tight end problems, you're going to be missing Julius Thomas this week, going to be missing Allen or whatever this week, pick up Coby Fleener. That'll be a great addition. Number 5, Charles Sims. There's no information to talk about him in terms of stats, but the one thing's clear, we now know who the lead back is. I had him in several leagues where I had, several deep leagues I'm in, where I had Sims and Bobby Rainey, and I was just waiting for the one to pluck and drop back into the wire pool, and now we know that's Rainey. We haven't seen a whole lot of tape on Sims, but we saw some of the stuff in the preseason, and we know what he's about. He's a good runner and a good pass catcher. So it looks like he'll be used more than he's been used for sure, and more than anything else, it looks like Lovey finally has the running back that he's wanted to use all season. He inherited Martin, didn't really want him. Inherited Rainey, obviously didn't really trust him. This is the back it looks like they wanted to use. They drafted him, and this is the one they want to go with. Now's the time. They got nothing to lose now. So it's time to see what they got in Sims, and I'm looking forward to seeing it myself, and I'm thinking they're going to work him in to try to see what they can get out of him. He'd be a good ad because the wire is barren for running back. So grab him. He should be out there. Number 6, Kenny Stills. Brandon Cooks, one of my early sleepers who I was touting since early in the season, is out up to 6 weeks with a broken thumb. What that does is that opens up the clear spot for somebody to slide right in, and it was going to be Kenny Stills. It was going to be one of those two that was going to be the beneficiary of a lot of what they lost with Sproles or whatever have you anyway. And Cooks was taking up a lot of it, although Cooks started early in the season to the middle part of the season. He was starting not to be as effective as we thought, but he was starting to come on in the last few weeks, and so was Kenny Stills starting to get some activity. Now with Cooks out, expect Stills' activity to increase even more, especially for the fact that Colston is virtually no more of a factor. Right now, I mean, you've always known that the Saints rush receivers, went through every position right there. Receivers is almost like a bad running back committee. It's becoming more and more clear now. Stills is going to be a primary beneficiary of this, and I expect his role to expand. So if you need a wide receiver and say Matthews isn't there anymore, Kenny Stills will be a nice little speculative ad. See what he does over the next few weeks. Number 7, Daniel Herron of the Indianapolis Colts, if you didn't know who he was. I know very little about Daniel Herron. I don't know how he practices. I don't know how explosive he is. I don't know how he is in pass pro or how he catches. And I don't even know how the team likes him. But there is one thing that I do know. I know that Trent Richardson sucks. And because of that, someone's going to have to take the initiative. Rich is not going to have the leash he had last year. When Bradshaw was out with injury last year and they brought in Richardson, they kind of coddled him and let him go with this whole "we'll work you in," as he was looking sorrier and sorrier and sorry. Well, it's this leash is no more. If he doesn't perform decent the next couple of weeks, including even more so this week, I can very well see someone being dropped head first into this rushing role because they're going to need something because Andrew Luck can't just pass all day. If Trent Richardson doesn't get it going, I see the first man up being Daniel Herron. And because of that, and even with this guy I know nothing about really, he has the chance to have a bigger role than anyone I've mentioned in this list, sans Isaiah Crowell. So right now, again, I just mentioned that the waiver wire is completely barren pretty much, especially in terms of running backs and in deep leagues. But I can almost guarantee you Daniel Herron's out there. Put your waiver claim in for him just because it might be lightning in a bottle. You never know, but the one thing you know is the same thing I know. Trent Richardson isn't good, and his leash is short. So take the chance out there. You got nothing to lose for the fact that you got nothing better to get from. So take a look at that. Number 8, Wes Welker. He's on here for one reason and one reason only. Well, two reasons. One, Emmanuel Sanders may very well be out this week. And two, Julius Thomas even has more of a chance to be out this week. This is simply a next man up situation when you've got the best quarterback in the game throwing to you. Peyton Manning's going to throw the ball. He's got to have somebody to throw it to. If Sanders isn't there, if Thomas isn't there, you best believe Wes Welker's going to get some work. Maybe this work will translate into even more trust. And if it translates to trust with Manning, he's going to use you. This might be something that gets Wes back into the fold. Don't necessarily guarantee it, but this week is going to be an interesting week in terms of what the Broncos do, especially coming off of that nasty loss this week. He's 40% owned out there, so you have a nice chance of getting him. Although he's very injury prone and concussed and a shell of himself, he's still Wes Welker, and Wes Welker is known to be a pro's pro. So you can do worse than adding him. Check him out for a speculative ad and see how he does. Number 9, Trey Mason. We all know the Rams' rushing scheme has been a mess all season. It's been hard to own any of them. I mean, any of us who drafted Zach Stacy in as early as even the second, third round, we blew a pick. But there is one thing that we can't argue, and in particularly the team can't argue. When Trey Mason plays and gets to work, they increase their chances of winning significantly. The 2 wins that they have this year was Trey Mason having his 2 good games of the year. It shouldn't be considered happenstance. This is the direct correlation. If I see it, I know a coaching staff in the pros should see this. When Mason is out there getting used, it's translated to wins. And now that they've got nothing to lose, it's time to get him out there to be used. I know they're worried about his pass protection and how he didn't learn it in Auburn and this, that, or the other, but now's the time to get him some real game experience of being a pass pro running back. He can't do anything but get better. His talent is insurmountable in between, meaning with the other rushers they have, and he's got all the skills everywhere else but pass pro to improve. Let's see what you get out of him. And maybe they see what I see and will use him going forward. Because, again, he correlates to their wins. If they see what I see, he should be utilized a lot going forward the rest of this season. And the next 3 weeks, he has some good matchups. So pick Trey Mason up and hope that the coaching staff sees what I see, that he correlates to them winning. Best chance of winning out there. And number 10, Josh McCown. This has less to do with him and more so to do with those who got RG3 and have the feeling like I have that RG3 is going to phase himself out before this season's out to where he may not even be playing, or that he's just going to stink it up because the locker room is so broken, or his confidence will be broken, but they'll break him down to where he's not used. Or if you don't believe in Sanchez because Sanchez had another Sanchez game, or you lost Carson Palmer. One thing about Josh McCown is he's one of the more consistent quarterbacks in the league over the last, if you couple in last year with this year. He had an early start to this year where it wasn't good, but he's 2 straight games of 19 fantasy points, both weeks. And 19 fantasy points is more points than a lot of even top-notch guys have had over the last few weeks. Josh McCown has sat on the bench and watched, and he now looks like he's in the pocket for being a little bit better and more consistent, like he's notable to do. So if you lost Carson Palmer, if you don't trust RG3, you don't trust Sanchez, or the up and down play of Matt Ryan or Andy Dalton, if you went with McCown, I'm not against that. I'm adding him in a couple of deep leagues I'm in, or trying to rather, and who knows? We'll just see what happens. He's a solid quarterback, a perennial backup type of quarterback, but he's very consistent. You saw it last year, and you've seen it over the last couple weeks. A lot of us have quarterback problems. You can do worse. So yeah, that's the 10 ads this week. Hope you enjoyed it, and hope you guys are edging closer to your playoffs. At this point, you should be very close to knowing where you are in terms of this whole thing. Now, if you're a team that's like 6-5, which I am in maybe 2 leagues or something like that, I'm in a league where I'm in a 6-way tie in a 12-team league, 6-way tie, and it's not a points for thing who's going to be determined who gets in. I've heard it was going to be a playoff. I'm in a league where the league manager, he doesn't know really how he has this thing set up, and I have no idea how we're going to be doing this. But either way, point is, I'm in a league where it's 6 of us in the same spot. So we're trying to flesh out this whole playoff thing. If you're in good position, now's the time to solidify your team, cut the bait, use some of the things I said last week and some of the things this week, and start solidifying it. If you're out of contention, hopefully you learn something this year. If it was injury-based, it happens. But the playoffs are coming up. Start looking at defenses that you want to maybe hold on to that's got good matchups going forward. Start cutting certain fat players, cut the fat of terms of players, and adding your handcuff to your running back stud and all of that. And I hope, for God's sake, I have been saying it week after week after week, that if Josh Gordon was out there in your leagues, that you grabbed him. He's starting this week, and I can't wait to unleash him on everybody. I have him in the vast majority of my teams, and I can't wait to use him. Right now, it looks like he's about 60-something% on, which means he's got a 30-something% cushion out there. This week, that's going to be all taken care of. If he's lucky to be out there in one of your leagues, grab him. And as for Adrian Peterson, the news is they're still trying to fight appeals to where he might be able to play this weekend. Don't count on it, but don't drop him if you have him. Just hold on to him. So yeah, just follow me on Twitter like usual. Subscribe to the channel like usual, and any start-sit questions you have. And I'm going to be doing a short video on trade strategies for the fact that right now, what time is it? It's 5:30 p.m. By noon tomorrow, I don't know if it's Pacific or Eastern time, the trade deadline is over for standard leagues and ESPN. So for all of y'all who's trying to work out something that can be done within the next 16 hours or so, feel free to send a message and ask me any trade questions you may have. But I'm going to be doing a video of some things that you could be targeting, because you can't operate on a whole bunch of trade stuff because it's less than a day to get something going. So we'll see how the trade things go. I already pulled off a nice one this last night, but I'm going to do a video on that, so stay tuned. So again, follow me at FF Real Talk. Ask any questions here in the comments, and subscribe here. And we'll talk to you next time. Have a good one. Good luck.